Hey YouTube, JM Sports 100 here, and it is time for part one of my weekly NFL review brought to you by jmsports.org, the official website of JM Sports and the JM Sports Show. I am Jonathan Morzette, and for those of you who didn't see it last week, here's how we do this. I give you my preview or my thoughts of every NFL game that takes place this weekend, and I also give you a prediction for who I think is going to win the game each week. Um, and that does include a lock pick. And the reason why I mention the lock pick, and I do know that there is college football going on, so if I keep looking up at my TV, I apologize um, for that. But also kind of trying to keep an eye on my picks there on that end. Which, if you haven't seen them already, they are posted over on my channel, or here on my channel, rather. Okay, the reason why I bring up my lock pick so early in the show is because the first game we go through is going to be my lock pick for this week. And that game does take place in my home state of Wisconsin. The Buffalo Bills come into town after taking a 15-10 loss last week to the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins were my lock pick last week, so I'm going against the Bills for my lock for the first 2 weeks of the season, so I'm sure that they're not happy about that. Aaron Rodgers had a big game last week, 19-31, 188 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ryan Grant had 8 carries for 45 yards. Neither one of the running backs, neither Brandon Jackson nor Ryan Grant, did get in the end zone. However, Ryan Grant did get something that none of the Packer fans wanted to see, and that is a leg/ankle injury that has him out for the rest of the 2010 season. That's a huge blow, but they have Brandon Jackson as their backup, and I think Brandon Jackson is going to carry the load just fine. The problem, the thing we don't know about Brandon Jackson, though, is can he carry the load long term? Can he carry the load? Can he get a majority of the carries for the next 15 games and stay healthy? That's the big problem. That's the big thing that Packer fans, I think, are wondering. They're curious about. Brandon Jackson is not a bad running back. I believe he was a second round pick a couple of years ago. And after he took over for Grant, after Grant went down, he did have 18 carries. He got 63 yards out of it, 3.5 yards a carry. So, not bad. I expect Rodgers to have a big game today or on Sunday, and I expect. Here's what I expect. I expect Rodgers to have a big game, and I also expect Greg Jennings to have a big game. I think those two will hook up a lot against a somewhat struggling Buffalo Bill defense. Let's take a look at some of the injuries now before we get to talking about the Buffalo Bills. Let's talk about the injuries for the Packers. Desmond Bishop is questionable with a hamstring. Darren College is a game time decision. He has an illness. I'm sorry, he is questionable. Corey Hall questionable with a hip, and Mike Neal is questionable with a rib. Of course, Ryan Grant out. The Buffalo Bills had Trent Edwards. He didn't look too terrible. 18 completions, 34 attempts, 139 yards, and a score. The Bills looked awful in their running game, and that's, I think, something that the Packer defense is going to really be able to have a heyday with. Fred Jackson, 4 carries, only 19 yards. Marshawn Lynch, 3 carries, 13 yards. They only ran the ball 7 times between the two running backs last week in Miami, or in Buffalo against Miami. Receiving, Steve Johnson led 3 receptions, 40 yards. Rascal Paris, 2 receptions, 35 yards, and a score. Um, the Packers, I have to admit, a little bit disappointing. Last week, I thought against Philadelphia Eagles. I know that they did win the game, but still very disappointing. And I think if you're the Eagles, you are in some serious trouble, and we will talk about that when we get to the Eagles game against the Lions in just a little bit. Um, but you know, the Packers look like they need a little bit of work defensively. They look like they need a little bit of offensively. I don't think they need a whole lot of work. Special teams need some work. Special teams are a lot better than it's been in the last couple of years. So I guess that's a plus. The Buffalo Bills, they just need some work all over. The Chan Gailey era. They're trying to get things where they need them to be, and I think they will be fine. I think they will win some games. I think they win at least 6 uh, on the year, between 5 and 6. I think they either go 5-11 or 6-10. They didn't look horrible against Miami. Didn't look the greatest, but they didn't look horrible. They definitely did give me a scare for that being my lock pick. And speaking of my lock pick, that is exactly what I'm doing. I am taking the Green Bay Packers for my lock pick. Now, for those of you who didn't see last week, what my lock pick is me guaranteeing you a victory. I don't think one thing I didn't explain. One thing I didn't explain last week that I will explain here is that when I do these lock picks, I'm going to do them through the whole season, but I'm only going to pick a team once. So I've picked my Dolphins for the year; they're done. I've picked my Packers for the year; I can't pick them anymore after this weekend. So the Packers are my lock pick. Packers are my pick. Period. I do still have to get my page made for this. I haven't done that yet, so I will get to that and get my stats up for last week. The Packers are expected to make a Super Bowl appearance this year. I had high hopes for it too, obviously. One, being a Packer fan. Two, I actually thought that it could happen. But I'm not so sure anymore after watching the game against the Eagles. They need a little bit of work. CJ Spiller. That could be tough on the Packer defense. Michael Vick was tough on the Packer defense. I think CJ Spiller could also be tough on the Green Bay Packer defense, but we'll see how things go. A couple more things. Rodgers, I think, easily. Yeah, I think Rodgers easily at least passes for 300 yards in a football game against the Bills. Against the Bills defense. I will be surprised if Trent Edwards has more than 150 yards passing in this game. I know that the Packers are a little weak in their secondary, with of course Harris being out and things. But I think I will still be surprised. I don't think that the Bills wide receivers are much of a match for the Packers secondary. That's just truly how I feel. No, I'm not being a homer. That's just honestly how I feel. So my pick for the game is the Packers. Next game we come up to is the Miami Dolphins and the other team from the NFC North that's supposed to be very good, the Minnesota Vikings. One of the pluses for the Vikings coming into this game, of course, old Gramps Brett Favre. um, is that they uh had a huge break. They haven't played in quite a while. I haven't played since last Thursday, so that is a good omen. Here's a not necessarily a good omen for the Vikings, perhaps, is that um Tony Sperano, head coach of the Miami Dolphins, 5-3 in his career against the NFC. Um, but I think Miami is going to run into a wall. Ronnie Brown going to run into a wall. Ronnie Brown had 13 carries for 65 yards and a score. Ricky Williams had 18 carries for 62 yards last week. But Ricky Williams, Ronnie Brown are going to run into a big wall. And that wall is Jared Allen, the big defensive end. I think that's going to be a huge struggle for the Miami Dolphins. And so I think that more than anything, the Dolphins are going to have to rely on Chad Henne, and Chad Henne is going to have himself a big game through the air. Chad Henne did not quite look right against the Buffalo Bills. Last week, he did go 21 of 34 for 182 yards. He did not have a touchdown pass in the game. The best looking receiver, Brandon Marshall, 8 receptions, 53 yards. I think Marshall and Chad Henne need to have a big game together if they expect to win this football game. But Chad Henne, like I said, just did not completely look right to me against the Bills, but they have a big chance to exploit a Viking secondary that's a little bit rough. And they need to do that because they are not getting the run going. I don't think either of the running backs have. If they break triple digits, I will be surprised. Jared Allen going to be tough. Pat Williams going to be tough, obviously. Kevin Williams going to be tough. I don't think Ronnie Brown and Ricky Williams have a very big game against the Minnesota Vikings, which means they're going to have to rely on the arm of Chad Henne. Brett Favre comes off 10 days rest. That could also be more problem for the Miami Dolphins. He's probably the freshest he's been since he first came to Viking camp. So that could be problems for them. Percy Harvin was listed as questionable with headaches. I have a feeling Percy Harvin probably will play, but if he doesn't, and even if he does, I expect a lot of Brett Favre to Visanthe Shenko in this game. That is what I believe will be the thing that is going to help the Vikings get their first win of the year. So there you go. You just got to look at my pick. I hate to do it, but I do have to go with Brett Favre and the Vikings to beat the Dolphins in Minnesota. Favre looked a little bit shaky on opening night, and timing was a little bit off in the game against the Saints, but I think it's going to be better. They've had 10 days to get their stuff going. Percy Harvin has been practicing, and everything has been okay, so I think their timing will be better, and I think the Vikings have themselves a big day. I think it's a good football game, but in the end, I have got the Vikings in the game. Coming up next, we take a look at a surprise team from the AFC West. It is a team that I truly believe could possibly walk away with that division. Who's that? We'll talk about that coming up and more as we roll through the games for week 2. We will be right back. to continue with that, I am Jam Sports 100. Stay right here.